Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Spill the Tea with Dr. Pete and T of Ketonic Revolution. Uh, and good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is all around the world. We should be live on Facebook and YouTube right now. Um, we're not going to make LinkedIn today because even though I thought we had met their criteria, we're not quite there yet. T, I see your picture. Is the audio and everything okay?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfect.
Perfect.
All
Good
right.
morning, everybody.
All right. Yes. So have patience with us. We've moved to a different platform. And it's a great day. We'd like to go about 45 minutes with the topic we have today to be respectful of everyone's time. And then we're going to we're going to sign off at that point. Um, we are on StreamYard, and those of us that are joining us on Facebook or YouTube, you should be able to actually post comments. Feel free to do that. Comments, questions, whatever it is, and we'll pick them up right away and address them. Let me shift to T for a second, and then I'm going to give a short presentation on what it is we want to hash out today. T, did you hear me?
Yeah, did you ask me a question? Sorry.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to know if you wanted to throw in or tell our viewers anything before I give a short presentation on today's topic.
No, I think we should just go ahead and jump into it. I think our topic today is first a topic that comes up a lot that we've actually had a lot of discussions about in the past, but also it's a question and it's a topic that comes up when people start the ketogenic diet in general. So go for it. Jump right into the presentation.
Okay, so today's topic are the truth, the lies, food labels, and how this affects being in the ketogenic lifestyle or low carb lifestyle. And I'm going to define low carb as being about 50 grams or less of carbs per day. And we're talking here about total carbs. And I'll try to define all the parameters uh, about that. There's a couple things I want to say going into this because both T and I participate in a lot of different electronic forums. And over the past few days, over the past couple of weeks, actually, on Clubhouse, as an example, we hear a lot of different things. And so I want to lay a little bit of groundwork for this. It's my impression at this point that most people who go on to the ketogenic diet, who are mainly surfing the internet for their directives or information on how to do this, do it by managing macronutrients using an app. All right, that's number one. I was looking this morning before our presentation at several different private Facebook groups, and I will maintain confidentiality here. But in one particular group, they recently put out a poll to the members. There were 1,300 members, and 30% of those members manage their they determine the amount of carbs that they're eating on a daily basis using macronutrient percentages and further tracking. And that number is around 390 out of a total of 1,300 members. Why is this important? Because in order to track your carbs using these tracking applications and whatnot, you are dependent on determining the number of carbs in any given meal by depending either on the food label or what the macro nutrient counter approximates in their system. So let's quickly and there can be issues with this before I share my screen and take you through some examples. There can be issues with this if you're in the ketogenic lifestyle because of compelling metabolic issues, like say you're type 2 diabetic, or you're severely overweight with medical complications, or you have cardiovascular disease and you're trying to improve that situation. The reason is because in those situations, when you go into the ketogenic lifestyle, it's really imperative that you have the amount of carbs you're having on a daily basis down in a specific target region, which on balance is going to be around 50 grams of carbs per day or less. This becomes problematic when you track your carbs based on macronutrient profiles. One of the main reasons is because food labels have upwards of 20% error in them. All right, so we are going to, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know how this works. Okay, so
Are you sharing your screen?
I'm trying. It's blocking me. So we're learning something new. You're back. All right, so I'm just going to have to explain. I'm just going to do it using explanation. So in terms of food labels, there's about 20% error in a given food label. And so the problem with this is that when we're tracking our carbs via food labels, one has to keep in mind that when you look at the carbs, that there's upwards of 20% error in that to start with. That's number one. And number two, quite often in terms of food suppliers, they're actually not even honest about what's in the particular food item that you're looking at. So what I mean by that is that when I look at a food item that has a food label on it, I'm not just looking at the nutrition label. I also have to look at the ingredients, the ingredient list. And the reason for that is I want to see if they've got added sugar in there. And sugars come with a lot of different names. So, and I don't want to get off on that tangent because the presentation here is already starting to go on long enough. But the point being that a food product can have added sugar to it, even salt. If you take a container of Morton salt off the shelf at the store, and there will be a couple of different varieties of that type of salt, you will discover that some of their varieties actually have added dextrose, which is glucose, in the salt. And, the question becomes, why are they doing that? So you might be wondering, okay, why does this even matter? Well, the reason that it does is because over the course of a day, and especially if you're just going into the keto lifestyle, you probably are still eating 3 meals a day. You're probably having snacks in between them. And when you add up the contribution of these errors at every single meal, you can easily be exceeding the amount of carbs that you should be having on an individual level. And where this becomes really important are for the people that have compelling reasons to be here. All right. And I have direct experience with this as a health coach with clients who exceed the amount of carbs, and because of this methodology and in terms of tracking their carbs. And the consequence of this is having fasting glucose values that are out of the range that they should be, right? Ketone values that are too low, so they're not coming into ketosis. And why do we care about ketosis? Because in the long run, we want to keto adapt. We want the organ systems in our bodies, the pancreas, the liver, the kidneys, the brain, to adapt to a food environment which is low in carbohydrates. So it's necessary to keep the carbohydrates low. And another aspect of this, so there's two things, and now I'm going to shut up and let my daughter talk. There's two aspects of this. The first is recognizing before we get into the forest, and maybe we're already in the forest, is that in this lifestyle, it's super important to realize that we eat whole food. That's one of the main uh, parameters of this lifestyle. We eat whole food. We buy vegetables. We buy high dense, nutrient dense meats, right? And we cook the food and we eat that way. So when we go into a supermarket, necessarily we're staying out of the aisles. We are staying out of the aisles. All right. Does that mean we never go into them? No, sometimes we do. Like when I get my olives, for example, I have to venture into the aisles. And yes, I even look at the labels on the olives I get, because you never know what these guys are going to put in there, right? You got to go into the aisles for the oils, right? The avocado oil and the olive oil and the ghee and the beef tallow and so on. But other than that, we stay on the perimeter of the supermarket. The next thing is, when we go into the keto lifestyle, it's super important to understand that you're coming into this lifestyle with all kinds of food habits that in many cases you don't even recognize. And what am I getting at? I'm getting at the food cravings, and like in my own personal development, eating the big fatty chocolate bars full of sugar every single night after my meals, right? After a high carbohydrate meal, then attacking this chocolate bar, at least half of this big ass thing that had a lot of sugar in it. So you come into this with habits. Why am I bringing this up? Because the keto marketing has exploded. The food people that are out there have recognized that we're becoming a bigger and bigger market, and now there's all kinds of keto products. And I feel really bad I cannot share my screen this morning because I was ready to go with this. On average, these products have between 11 to 19 grams of carbs in them per serving, right? And so one of the biggest problems, and this ties back into calculating your carbs with macros, is that if you are eating those products, there's just no way that you're going to stay in ketosis. Again, why does this matter? If you're here for compelling reasons, the type 2 diabetic, severely overweight with medical complications, cardiovascular disease, you're not going to stay down at 50 grams or less per day. There's just no way that that's going to happen. And one of the issues with it is the confusion out there. What we're told by the establishment, that we don't burn fiber. That's a problem, because we all have gut bacteria and we're all individuals, and our gut bacteria are capable of fermenting some of that fiber. And so it is and can affect our blood glucose. And this is the reason we stick to total carbs. We stick to total carbs. The marketing people want you to think about net. They want you to think, when you go to replace, right? You come into the keto lifestyle and you're used to having your cookies every night. They want you to replace that food craving with keto cookies, which still have between 11 to 19 grams of carbs in them, because they're trying to market this food to you that it's okay for you to eat. All right. So this is the problem. Now I'm going to shut up and pass off the conversation to my daughter. And we also have another guest in the room who's welcome to speak up. I'm going to let T talk first, and then we'll bring this other person in.
Okay, so I think you bring up a really good point. There's two things that I think are super important. First one is tracking the total carbs, not the net carbs. And I also was in a Facebook group. I saw a post the other day. I'm not going to say which one, but one of the questions that came up was, if I just stay under 20 net carbs a day, is that going to put me, like, am I going to be able to lose weight? Well, if you actually look at something that has 20, and there was actually a picture of the product that the individual was talking about, and I don't have it, but that person was talking about, it was like it was pasta. It was pasta. It was substitute pasta. And that pasta had 25 grams of carbohydrates total per serving, but had like 10 grams of carbohydrates net. If you're eating that food, like for someone like me, if I consumed, and what I mean by someone like me is that dad and I do the ketogenic diet for, again, like we've discussed in the past, different reasons, right? Like in the long term, the same reason, but he's a lot more strict than I am sometimes. And I like to test food and see like, okay, if I eat this, will I be fine? For someone who's been doing the ketogenic diet for over 2 years, or the ketogenic lifestyle for over 2 years, if I had 25 grams of carbohydrates in pasta that is said to be keto, that is going to throw me out of ketosis, like faster than, what is it, a bat out of hell. Like literally, that's going to throw me out of ketosis. And because of, and when I get thrown out of ketosis, I go through a ton of different, my body just doesn't feel very good. So one thing I have a really hard time and want to express to people is that just because something says it is keto or low carb does not mean that it is keto or low carb at all. At all. And that's something I want to make very specifically clear from my side of things. The second side of things is, let's go back to what Dad had just talked about, being fully keto adapted, fat adapted. And the reason I'm going to bring this up is because there's a protein shake that I have now that I didn't have when I first started the ketogenic lifestyle in the mornings, because I didn't know if it was going to throw me out of ketosis, and I needed to get to that point first, or out of the fat adaptation state. So when I first started the ketogenic lifestyle, I took out everything that I had before and basically threw out all of the food that was really high in carbohydrates out of my refrigerator. I brought everything that was, like we just mentioned, whole foods, back into my refrigerator. After I was fully fat adapted, I started trying protein shakes. One of the protein shakes I use is Premier Protein. That's like the only one I actually use. It's a Premier Protein shake, and it has 5 grams of carbohydrates per serving. For me, now that I'm fully fat adapted and I've tested to see if that'll keep me in ketosis, I know that that works. But I mean, I think we should make this more of a conversation, Dad, rather than like, I think, having a discussion about that. I mean, is that something that you would have, is a Premier Protein shake with 5 grams of carbohydrates? Is that something that you would even look at in the store, or is that something that you'd completely bypass?
No, you raise a really, really good point, and this is the thing that I feel that actually a large fraction of the people that are trying this lifestyle misunderstand, and this is the idea of keto adaptation versus fat adaptation. So, and this is an individualized thing again. So somebody like me who is pre-diabetes, right, and then I reverse that condition. It's taken a couple of years for me, and I'm still undergoing changes to keto adapt. This is the thing. When around the internet, you hear all kinds of numbers thrown out. Oh, it only takes a couple of weeks, this and that. Your sugar platform, your fasting glucose, your A1C does respond very, very quickly to shifting to this lifestyle. But other aspects of it in your pancreas, your liver, kidneys, brain, all of that takes significantly longer. Why am I going here again? Because it's taken me 2 years now to basically, I can eat the kind of thing that you're talking about now without totally crashing my system, right? But in the early days of this transition, I can tell you right now, I couldn't have done that. I was seeing all kinds of strange relationships between what I was eating, and this goes to, as a health coach, my belief that in the beginning, no matter who you are, even if you're just into this because you want to lose weight, that it's pretty crucial to go low, and it's pretty crucial to track. Right now, I'll stop in a second. What I didn't say in the beginning of this is that, I think most people are using their percent of macros, how many carbs based on food labels and these applications am I eating during the day and so on down the road. Whereas the type of tracking that I do is distinct, right? Because I finger stick, I look at my glucose, not only fasting, but over the last 2 years, especially in the beginning, I was testing my fasting glucose and my ketones before a meal. and then at 1 hour and 2 hours after the meal. And I was doing that. Why? Because I wanted to know what the effect of particular food items was on my system. And back in those days, even the effect of protein is different than it is now. So people have got to learn that their carb tolerance is going to change in this lifestyle, because, everyone needs to remember that over half of our population has some level of carb intolerance, and they just don't even know it, right?
Mhm.
So when you start this lifestyle, it's fairly important that you're tracking, but you're tracking by things that give you definitive numbers. This is my opinion about it. Because now I could do the drink you're talking about. I'd still be careful with it because I had compelling reasons for doing this, and I know better. I know that if I go hog wild on carbs again, I'm going to be right back where I was. I don't know how long it would take, but I'm going to be back there. So yeah, I could try your drink. But I think the point you're trying to make is that, when you're in the store to buy that premier stuff, right? When you first went down that road, I'm certain you picked the bottle up off the shelf, turned it around, and looked at the food label.
Yeah, I did. But I guess I'm asking, like, because a question that comes up a lot is that something that you would even consider? I mean, you were diagnosed as pre-diabetic, 2 years ago. Is that even, you know, is that a premier protein shake with 5 grams of carbohydrates that say in the ingredients some sucralose or however you say that word for the sugar aspect? Is that even something that you'd consider getting? And that's kind of like the discussion that I wanted to get to kind of start into, because the question that I have for people that I air, the question that comes up a lot that is arising that I see in people beginning the ketogenic lifestyles, they have no idea what they would get and what they wouldn't. As a health coach, I mean, I again, you know, I drink the Premier Protein Shake because I don't necessarily have time to eat breakfast sometimes, and it is sweet though. Like it definitely has it like some sugar intake, and because of keto, I'm a lot more sensitive to that now. But is that something that you would completely bypass in the aisles, and just as something you'd recommend to clients right now? Is that something that I guess I'm asking also for myself? Like, is that something that you'd completely just like turn away at in the aisles?
I recommend to our clients, if they're beginning the lifestyle, in the first months of it, to walk past things like that. And it's for two reasons. I'm worried that they're going to exceed the carbs over the course of the day, which actually this is speaking from experience with them. And
Mhm.
then the other thing is the sweetness. I worry about that because of this replacement phenomenon. You know what I mean? All right, I'm going to go ketogenic. Um, and how am I going to have my cookies? How am I going to have my pizza? How am I going to do this and that? And right away going on the internet and finding all these keto products that actually turn out to have a lot of carbs in them. And then they just replace those foods. And the problem is they're basically fostering those food cravings, right?
Mhm.
Because the psychology, the brain chemistry, and everything, they're maintaining that, and that's going to cause them. People talk about sustainability of this lifestyle all the time. That's the one thing that can get in the way, actually.
So
Um,
then, that brings me to another question. I mean, I have the food label of the Premier Protein right here, and I can just read it. And so this was actually a question that I thought would just be good to talk about. Okay, so if we look at the ingredients of the Premier Protein right here, it has total fat 3 grams, total carbohydrates 5. It says dietary fiber 3 grams of carbohydrates, and total sugar at 1 gram of carbohydrates. But then I think it's funny that they say 0 grams of added sugars. But if we add the ingredients, if we look at the ingredients right here, it's water, milk protein, calcium, cacao powder, contains less than 1% of high sunflower oil. So let's talk about sunflower oil. Is that technically something that could throw you out of ketosis if you had it?
okay, so
Is that a
before,
good natural fat?
no, well, okay, hold on. So I'm going to answer that question, but before I do, should we bring in Austin
Yeah.
so he can throw in on the conversation? Okay, so Austin, I'm going to answer this question, and then we can, if you want to throw in also on this question, and then any other, if you have questions or any other things, we can get this conversation going. But okay, so T has raised an issue. So again, let me just remind everybody that this lifestyle is based on eating whole food. So as soon as we start shifting to these keto products, protein shakes. In fact, one of the things I was going to bring up this morning was a keto smoothie, right? You run into, again, these are processed foods. And what do they have in there? And T just pointed this out. They are marketing that product based on the total carbs are 5 grams. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
then they try to argue, well, there's fiber in here, so the net carbs are only this. So again, I think if you buying one of those a protein shake off the shelf is really something that has to be done carefully. I think in the beginning in the keto lifestyle, you shouldn't do stuff like that. When you get to where you're at, I think it's different because you've been in the lifestyle a while now, and you have, I think, a good sense for what your carb tolerance is. So down the road you can go. You can have some, and again, if your finger's sticking or you're using another method, like I know that you use the pea sticks and you use the breathalyzer,
Mm-hmm.
and you monitor ketones, then you can adequately see.
I technically also use the finger stick. It's like the back burner.
And then before I open this to Austin, and I know I'm being intense or whatever, because I've really been, this topic has really been boiling over in me the last couple of weeks with all of the different forums we're in. You pointed out this thing has safflower oil in it. No, the vegetable oils, you should stay away from them. They're polyunsaturated. Are they going to throw you out of ketosis? Most likely not. I mean, they don't have an insulin stimulating effect. They're not going to cause the expression of insulin to any degree. Why are they dangerous? Because they're highly oxidizable, which means they're highly reactive in cellular environments. And what do? They get intercalated. They become part of the membrane systems of our cells, where they're sitting there undergoing chemical reactions with the cellular environments, which disrupts that membrane. And people can think of it this way: our cell membranes are very, very they're intimate, photographic environments. So you can think about this as a lock and key, right? Everyone understands that the key that unlocks your front door slides into the lock. You turn it. Now you can open the door. So imagine that you go off to work one day and you lock your door, and over the course of the day, the outer surface of that lock mechanism gets all screwed up. Somebody comes in there and they bang on it with a hammer, and you get all these jagged pieces of metal sticking into the lock mechanism, right? So that the surface is completely disrupted, and the hole to get into the mechanism is no longer of the right shape. And you come home with the key, you try to put it in the lock, it doesn't go in, and you can't open the door. All right. That's what happens with these vegetable oils. And everyone who's listening to this should understand that if you've been in the standard American diet now for decades, like I was, and your cellular membranes are populated by these things, it takes upwards of 2 years for those things to get cycled out. If you switch today to natural fats, the ghee, the beef tallow, avocado oil, olive oil, bacon grease, you switch today and you're looking at 2 years before the proportion of the bad oils is shifted out of your membranes to the proportion of good oils. All right, I'm going to be quiet now. I know I'm going on. Austin, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's great. There's so much misconception around food labels and ingredients in them. I know you and I have talked about it. I know Tanner and I have talked about it. And, one of the funny things I see a lot of times on packages and stuff is it's talking about net carbs. Well, that's great that it's net carbs, but like what happened to all the other carbs? They don't just disappear. They still get processed. They might be categorized as a different nutritional fact, but they're still part of the carbs. And so I always thought that was interesting. I had posted a question. I'm not sure if it popped up or anything, but I had said, if you're looking at a food label, and this is something Tanner and I, talk about a lot. It's kind of funny. We'll nutrition pick for like a gram or two in carbs, but the ingredients could be totally different on an item. Say chili paste. So are you looking for something that has lower grams of carbs or something that has the most natural ingredients that make it up, even though it might be a gram or two higher per serving?
Well, okay. Do you want to go first, T, or should I go?
I guess in my mind, I try and if I'm going through that, if you're looking at a food label, there are more natural ingredients in it, but slightly higher carbs compared to something that is more processed and lower carbs. If it were me, I'd probably completely ex-nay the whole thing. If there was, bad ingredients in it, and then it had more I don't know. I think for me, how I've shopped and everything. I try and really stay, out of the aisles in a way, unless it's absolutely necessary that I, go into the aisles, and normally it's to get a jar of pickles. So, I think for me, and I actually, the Premier Protein shake, it has not necessarily it has sunflower oil in it, Dad just discussed kind of how that affects your body. But that's definitely something to kind of look at. I don't know, Dad, I guess for me, what would be concerning is the slightly higher carbs with all the natural ingredients. I'd rather just make it from scratch.
Yeah, that's a good point. But also, there is another aspect to this, and that's the situation with real life. Like I cook with Thai chili paste a lot. The Thai kitchen. I also use tahini, and I have been remiss in my ability to find either of those items that have. Well, use the word natural. We do have to be careful about that because that is a marketing tool which is really abused.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the Thai chili paste, it does have some chemical preservatives and some things like that in there. I'm totally guilty of that. So is true about the tahini. I haven't been able to find a tahini brand that's completely clean. And that's a valid criticism. But what is true about both of those items is that they don't have more than 1 gram of total carb per serving. And go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say maybe that's, I think, something to kind of look at is if I do go into the aisles and I look at something, I really make sure that whatever I'm getting, whether it's spices like you're just talking about, tahini, salad dressing, whatever it may be, I really make sure that there's only 1 gram of carbohydrates or less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I call it the 1 gram rule. And I don't, I've had some clients raise the issue with me because I call it a 1 gram rule, but that doesn't mean that I absolutely live by that all the time. If I need something specific, and I was looking at tomato sauces because I know actually the two of you guys, you make the keto pizzas and you make some other dishes that you use tomato sauce. So I was looking at that this morning, and the best case scenario there I could find was 4 grams of total carbs per quarter cup serving.
Fries,
But here's the thing with that, go ahead.
Fries has one that's 3 grams of carbs.
Is how much?
3.
3. So you can get under that. But then with something like that is, using your head, because if you sit down and you drink the whole can of that, then that's going to be a problem. But if you're putting it on a pizza and you only use a quarter cup and it's spread around, you're making a sauce, so you're using a quarter cup and then you add some other things to that. Or you even go one better and you make the sauce out of whole food tomatoes, And in any case, obviously you have judgment things to make about that. But as T pointed out, you can find a tomato sauce for $3, but I'm certain that on the shelf you can find tomato sauces that are way more than that. So it's like not blindly taking something off of a shelf and just buying it and then using it, because that's going to probably get you into trouble. What do you guys think?
I agree. I mean, I think that I don't know. I've made like, we've made the keto pizza and the keto lasagna and stuff, and that's never really thrown me out of ketosis, But although when I make it, I make it in a big thing. And I basically have just one serving of the tomato sauce, like if you think about, how it's distributed. So I try and look like at, and actually this is really, so the guy here who helps me with archery, his name is Grizz, and he is a type 2 diabetic. And I was talking to him about keto pizza, and he said I can't eat pizza because the pizza sauce, right, and all the sugar and all the carbohydrates in there. And I was like, well, I make basically my own sauce out of like from scratch, which is just like the tomato sauce itself. Plus I add oregano, salt, garlic, salt, everything like that. And I think that makes a really good point. Like if you go and actually look at how much pasta sauce, let's say pasta sauce, right, is like how many grams of carbohydrates, like those things have upwards of like 30 grams of carbohydrates, right? Up like literally upwards 30 grams of carbohydrates per serving, which is not the whole thing. It's like 30 grams of carbohydrates per serving, which if it's like a quarter of a cup, I mean, that thing is filled with like 90 grams of maybe 100 grams of carbohydrates per container, right? So I just think that whenever I try and shop in the food aisles, I do, if I'm getting pasta sauce, or not pasta sauce, but tomato sauce, I make sure to look at every single can of sauce there that has and find the one with the lowest grams of carbohydrates, right? And when I come back and make it, like I just make sure it's evenly distributed so that when I do have a piece of, my keto lasagna, that I'm basically getting, the 3 grams of carbohydrates per tomato sauce plus whatever the zucchini is, plus the ground beef, plus the cheese. Yeah. But it's never thrown me out of ketosis. That's the nice thing.
Because you measure.
Well, I mean, I eyeball it, Dad. I eyeball it, and then I test my pee, whatever, like the next morning. But I always wait till the next morning to test, because that's by the time my whole body's like gone through, digested everything, and gotten like kind of a rest or whatever. I know you test after, like an hour after, but I like to do it first thing in the morning.
No, you make a good point. I mean, the crucial thing that I meant was that I don't have to test rigorously on meals anymore, because I'm 2 years into this now, right? In the beginning I did, because I was scared. I had pre-diabetes, right? And before I got onto the keto lifestyle, being a biochemist, I bought a glucose meter right away, and I saw, following the medical establishment, still eating grains and potatoes and, or sweet potatoes and things like that, following their advice specifically, I still was seeing my blood glucose doing this stuff, like after a meal, and then the next morning. So when I started the keto lifestyle, I was rigorously testing after meal. Now I don't have to do it so much anymore. It's just that sometimes I'll eat something completely different. Like I did your pizza. I used your from the two of you, your pizza recipe, right? I did that last week. We're going to make a recipe video of it this coming week, and I wanted to test it out. And I don't like, in terms of what we do to help people, I don't want to put a recipe out there and promote it to type 2 diabetics if I know it's spiking the heck out of my blood sugar, and so I made that meal last week and I tested, but like, did I right now, all I'm doing mostly these days is my fasting glucose and my fasting ketones, just to keep a record. And I think it's pretty important as a health coach to lead by example, not tell my clients one thing and then refuse to do it myself.
Did you like it, the pizza?
Yeah, it was really, really good. And Linda liked it too. The only thing I got to figure out is I used, maybe you can help me right now. I used the parchment paper and it was really hard to get the darn pizza off of that. What do you guys normally do?
Buttering or like taking avocado oil and putting it down on the sheet so that it doesn't stick so much. And then it'll get the bottom a little crisp on it. So it should help a little bit.
All right. Yeah, I was wondering about that. Or literally going out and getting a cookie sheet that has some coating on it or something. I don't know.
I would just, if it were me, like, what I'm going to do next time I make it is, I was using tinfoil and my pizza got stuck to the bottom of the tinfoil. So I'm actually probably just going to get a pizza sheet specifically for that and just cook the heck out of it because I can cut it on there and stuff like that. Not have to worry. I can like literally, but that's a learning process too. I just have to learn what the adjustment process is in order to get the pizza not to really stick at the bottom. So whether that's like, one more egg or, like Austin just said, like butter, avocado oil, like something that's going to get it not to necessarily stick at the bottom, is really good. But don't use tinfoil. Just don't.
Yeah. Unless you use the non-stick side, but even then it's kind of wonky.
Well, that was the experience I had with the parchment. I was like a battle between being able to eat pizza and get the paper off of it.
I remember one of the first times we made the keto pizza and that happened. I mean, we used parchment paper and it all got, we pulled it out of the oven and couldn't figure out how to get the pizza off the paper and just scraped it off and kind of ate it like a deconstruct.
No, you remade it.
Oh, we did remake it.
No, you remade it.
Wow. Yeah.
Do you guys, do either of you guys track your macros?
Not really.
Look, for someone who's severely anxious, because, I talk about that now. For someone who's severely anxious, I can't. I think that for someone who, and this is just personal, that for someone who deals with a lot of anxiety and everything, I mean, I stress out about a lot of stuff all the time. It's not mentally healthy for me to track my macros. I get really, really anxious if people are like tracking macros and doing all those things, or just me in general, you know what I mean? Because I don't want to have to worry about, what I'm eating. And like, I worry about what I'm eating in the ketogenic lifestyle, and testing is easy for me. But if I track my macros, then I'm going to start getting like super like, I mean, Dad, I was severely OCD as a kid. So like my mind just kind of goes into that demeanor of like, okay, I start getting like super OCD about tracking things. And for me, I don't need, I don't need that for my food because I love food. I don't want to worry about it.
Welcome, Salam. Glad to have you this morning. The topic, the thing that we've already gone through a presentation, but basically what we're discussing here is the inaccuracy in food labels and how that contributes if you are a person that tracks your carbs by using one of these apps and percent macros, that if you're going net versus total carbs and all this business that you can easily run into trouble in terms of like where your target carbs should be for whatever the reason is that you're in the keto lifestyle in the first place. And so the question I'm going to ask, and then we're going to be closing out pretty soon, but the question I'm going to ask back to T and Austin, the question I just asked them is whether they were tracking macros. So Austin, do you track them?
Not really. If I'm eating something with the label, I'll take a look at it just to be aware, of kind of what's going on. But, I just try to, if I'm making food, know my quantities and what to and not put into it. But I have an app that I could track and test. And I have it more for if I'm, in an environment where I'm out to eat with friends, like say at a chain restaurant like Cheesecake Factory, they have all the info on all the food on this. So, I'd be able to better identify something on the menu that I could eat that's like maybe not a salad, you know, and so that's kind of the extent of it.
Salim, do you have something to throw in before my next question?
You're on mute, I think.
There,
I'm good at this. So hi, I just wanted to say hi, everybody. I just saw the link to SteamYard and thought I'd check it out, and I wasn't sure of the actual. So sorry, I kind of came in late. I don't really have anything to add yet, but hello.
Good morning. So
Hi.
the question I want to throw out to all of you now is this idea. All right, so I advocate in terms of like, I call it intuitive eating with this. You're eating whole food. My plate is going to look like the following. There's going to be the protein on there, right? And the amount of protein containing food that you have is going to depend on, to a large degree, you know, what your needs are. Me being a CrossFit athlete, I eat more protein now on my plate than I did when I started this lifestyle, right? And then I will have 2 non-starchy vegetables on there. And then I have a massive salad. And, you know, in the early days, as I already said on here, I was testing my blood glucose and my ketones before the meal, and then at 1 hour and 2 hours after the meal. Anymore, these days, 2 years into it, I don't have to do that anymore. But I know that you guys are testing. How, when you compare the idea that you're going to do this by macros, you know, running an app all day long, figuring out your percentages versus the methodology that I'm talking about, what's your opinion about this? How onerous do you think this is? I know that T, you watch your ketones, you either pee on the strips or you
Use the BioSense or
the breathalyzer
or finger stick.
And then Austin, I know that you're testing a lot right now, but you're finger sticking, right? So what do you guys think about this? Because I know people out there, it's fair to say the majority are counting their macros. Man, you go on Clubhouse and everyone's talking about what app are you using, and it's like I sit there and I go, I think it would be easier if you were just willing to prick your finger. But what do you guys think about this?
I mean, I agree. I don't know. I think testing your macros, I think whatever works for a person, but testing the macros for me, just first of all, like I don't have time to, think about everything I eat and put it into an app and, you know, have that stress on, okay, what did I eat this morning? How many cups of coffee did I have? What is the total grams of, you know what I mean? Like for me, it doesn't necessarily work. So I test my ketones, you know, in the morning, right before bed. That seems to be working for me. That's
you guys don't, Austin, you guys don't seem to be really wound up about this thing. Salim, do you have something you want to throw in on?
Well, no, I mean, I'll just add what I can, which is not much. But I've done some blood sugar testing, some glucose testing, as well as some ketone testing, more to see my body's response to kind of, you know, high carb meals, or maybe you want to call them typical Western diet meals. Maybe not. That's probably a stretch. I usually don't eat typical Western diet, but you know, something like a meal with rice or potatoes, or even a sweet potato, or like a smoothie with a banana in it. I was very curious to see how my body was responding in terms of getting blood sugar levels back down. I was happy with what I saw, considering I'm, you know, overweight and have been overweight my whole life. I think my insulin response is still pretty good, but we had spoken about that before, about how really looking at the glucose without looking at ketones is not a full picture, or not, you know, far from a full picture. And but in terms of pricking my finger versus macros, I would always always prefer to do the testing, pricking the finger, because I just, macros drives me nuts. doing calorie counting drives me nuts, and macro calculating drives me nuts. And I also find that, you know, it's kind of an exact science dealing with inexact material, right? It's like the bananas. Yeah. This is a big banana. This is a small potato. This is a huge piece of meat. You know, it's like, and I mean, I know you can weigh things out, obviously, but then you get deeper into the woods. And so, you know, I think to work smarter and not harder in terms of trying to be in line with the feedback you can get from your body probably pushes in the direction of testing good markers, right?
I'd like to call it I eat instinctively.
Yeah, I like that. Me too. It's an instinctive thing. Once you learn the foods, more or less, and then when you come across a new one, you can just test and find out, does this work for me or not? Yeah. And then if it does work, it's just you just add it to the list of things you can eat, and then you can sit down and eat that stuff, and you don't have to like be crossing your eyes and, you know, freaking out. Yeah.
That does not work for me.
Okay, so I think it's time to close. We've been at this an hour now. So let me just reiterate. The main thing about the keto lifestyle is eating whole food. That's the bottom line, whole food. And in terms of the vegetables, sticking to things that are non-starchy. And just for anyone who's listening, you know, we have an acronym, no GPS, no grains, no potatoes, no sugar. And I mean, I actually think that's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Does this mean you can never have a potato or a sweet potato or a yam? No, it probably doesn't actually mean that. And it's important for somebody to know, you know, over in the long term, what their carb tolerance is. And if you're a type 2 diabetic, yeah, probably you're not going to be eating potatoes on of any type to begin with, right? But someone like me, a couple of years into this, you could probably have some.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know how much? Just test your blood. It's so simple. Just test it. Have a little bit and test it. And you'll be able to see how many units your blood sugar comes up. In fact, before we go, I want to tell a story, Salam, that goes back to your mom. And then I'll let everyone go here because I know we need to blast. She bought some Scrimshaw beer, right? And this is a beer that's being marketed as having only two carbs per serving in it, a serving being one bottle, and brought it to the house, right? And she's just experimenting with this stuff. And she asked me, do you want one of these? It should only have 2 carbs in it, you know, for a serving. So I was like, you know, I've been drinking the Altas now, 2.6 carb Altas, and I've tested those rigorously, and I know I can have a couple of them, and my blood sugar just stays flat, right? So I'm like, what the hell? Yeah, I'll try that. So I thundered back here where I'm filming this right now, and I tested my blood, and I got a number, and my blood glucose was 76, and my ketones were like, I'd have to look it up. So don't quote me on this number, but they were like, I don't know, maybe 1.3 or 1.4, something like that. Then I went out and I had the beer, and I spent the rest of just one of them. And I spent from the point I tested my glucose, it was an hour before dinner was ready. And then I thundered back here before I had any food and tested my glucose and my ketones, and my blood glucose after that beer, an hour after that beer, was at 96, 20 units up right now. Was I out of the range? No. Was that a danger to me? No. But do I want to sit down and drink 2 or 3 of those before a meal? And the answer would be no.
Yeah, and I mean, do you attribute that to the fact that it's, I mean, are they lying on the label? Because it seems to me like it should be in line with the Mick Ultras. You know, I mean,
yeah.
What do you attribute it to?
Well, and that's what T and I, before Austin joined us, the bit of the presentation was about. We called this presentation truth lies in food labels. And the problem is with the food labels is that they omit things, whether it was intentional or not. I don't know. I don't want to say that, since I did say the name of the beer on here, but maybe they attribute the fact to saying this is only 2 grams of carbs. Maybe they're calling that the net. I don't really know. But the problem with beer is if you pick them up and you look at the label, nowhere on there do they show you the ingredients.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What I do know is, using our method, the blood testing, I can't drink that beer. I mean, I can have one of them, but personally, with my carb intolerance, the fact that I was pre-diabetic 2 years ago, it's just not something I'm going to drink. I'm going to stick to my 2.6 Altas.
Yeah.
So
that's a great story, and I think that really dives into the whole topic about food labels and kind of what's being marketed to the public, especially now that keto is not a fad. It's really good for you, but especially because keto is becoming such a heavy, marketing tactic, that it's like you go into the stores these days, everything's freaking keto. You know what I mean? And it's like when you look at the labels on the back of it, it's like 25 grams of carbohydrates, and I want to about fall out of my seat. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's just, it's interesting.
Yeah, it
Totally.
also it seems like most of the things I come across that are marketed as keto are all the things that it really does you a disservice, because it's a lot of the things that you need to commit to taking out of your diet, right? Ice cream and things. It's like,
Oh, and the keto ice cream, don't ever have it. It tasted like chalk in my mouth. It was terrible.
yeah,
It was really the worst thing. I spent like $10 on that damn thing. That thing went right in the trash.
Yeah, well, it also just keeps you in this kind of like purgatory zone where you're like, okay, I can still it gives you this false hope of saying you can eat this stuff and it won't have the effects on your body that know it will, and
yeah,
it just
disservice.
It just keeps the cravings going.
it does.
All right. Does anyone have any last comments before we close?
I don't think so. My biggest comment is, please look at the labels and use total carbs, not net carbs. Like, I mean, you're losing like at most 10 grams of carbs that, like Austin just said, where are they going? Like,
There's still carbs, it's.
So just use total carbs for people listening.
If your gut's fermenting them, then you're getting the glucose. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So, well, I would like to thank everyone for being here, and look for us next week again. We will announce. T, are we going to be doing this on Thursdays now, or still Friday?
I think you wanted to switch to Thursday morning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So watch for the announcement, and we're using StreamYard, so that requires that we actually provide links. We can have up to 10 guests on the show. So between T and I, that means we can have 8 other people. We'd love to have you. We'd like differing opinions, and just because we say so doesn't mean it has to be done that way. And we recognize, like on today's show, that some people prefer the macros. We don't have a problem with that. We're just pointing out some of the issues that may exist with it. Equally saying that finger sticking has its own issues. So with that, I guess we're going to sign off. Thanks, Salim and Austin, for being here, and everyone else who was too chicken to put in a comment. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye.